All right guys, let's go ahead and have a closer look at my setup today for this video with the controller and my two Avkans PTZ cameras. Alright guys, let's go ahead and quickly have a closer look at everything that comes included with the kit. Obviously we have the controller itself, and I want to share with you guys my first impressions, just the way the controller looks, the nice black color, all of the buttons. We have the dials here onto the left and the top along with the joystick. And how can you not mention this 5-inch display screen, which is a touch screen. We do have a bunch of connections here at the back. We got the bottom of the unit, these small little legs over here. So we're going to get more familiar with this device throughout the course of this video, but just in general, first impressions, it does look really good. I'm excited to go ahead and set this up and start using it with you guys today. So what else is included with the kit? We do have this AC/DC power supply, which is obviously just going to plug into the wall and the other end to the back of the controller so we can power the device. We do also have this adapter for the power supply. Again, depending on where you're located in the world, they'll send you the correct adapter. We do also have a tally connector included with this kit, which is actually really nice. And onto the right hand side here, we do have the user manual guide. So now I just want to go ahead and get you guys a little bit more familiar with some of the specs and features, and along with the connections, etc. with this controller, and then we'll go ahead and start setting it up. Let me introduce to you the Avkans Pro NDI PTZ camera controller, a powerful and versatile tool for managing your live streams, video productions, and recordings. This controller supports multiple protocols like NDI, Visca over IP, and even Pelco-D and Pelco-P, making it perfect for multi-camera setups and dynamic multi-angle shooting. Installation couldn't be easier. Thanks to the PoE power over Ethernet, you only need a single Ethernet cable to get everything up and running. It works seamlessly with the Avkans PTZ cameras, their wireless options, NDI cameras, and even most PTZ camera brands on the market. When it comes to control, this joystick makes it a breeze. You can handle everything from camera movement, autofocus, manual focus, presets to tweaking the iris, shutter speed, pan tilt speed, and even the zoom speed. It also includes 6 custom user-defined keys, giving you extra flexibility for your workflow. Setting it up is just as simple. Thanks to the 5-inch touchscreen, you can configure your network, camera settings, and even the custom keys, all from one intuitive screen. And here's the kicker. You get HD video previews right on the touchscreen using the RTSP or NDI protocols, with support for up to 100 camera shortcuts across 10 groups, plus multiple connection options like RS232, RS422, and RS485, and Ethernet IP. And let's not forget about the NDI feature. The NDI license is included, so with just a quick touch of a button, you can search, control, and preview your NDI cameras with ease. Another awesome feature about this controller is the track record feature, which basically means we can go ahead and press record on the controller and now move the PTZ camera to any position, panning it left to right, tilting it up and down, even zooming in and zooming out to multiple different positions. So for an example, a wide shot, a zoomed in shot, maybe panning over to the left, panning over to the right. So whatever movements we make during that record process, it's actually going to save those, and now we can go ahead and call up that track record feature, and it's going to put it on loop. So basically we can kind of just stand back, hands-free, and the controller is going to be controlling that PTZ camera over and over on loop until we interrupt it and want to manually take over controls. This controller is a game changer for anyone managing a complex camera setup. Ready to take your productions to the next level? Let's dive into the details on how to set up and operate this controller. All right guys, let's go ahead and have a closer look at my setup today for this video with the controller and my two Avkans PTZ cameras. Starting off over here on the controller, you can see that we do have these two cables connected. The one on the right hand side, this black cable, is the DC input, which is supplying power to this controller. And next over here, this blue cable, which is the network cable, which is supplying an IP address network connection to this controller. So therefore we can go ahead and connect to our PTZ cameras. I will also mention this controller does support PoE, power over Ethernet. So if your network switch does support PoE, you can power this whole controller and supply a network internet connection just by simply connecting a network cable. There will be no need for a DC input to supply power. So next, let's have a closer look at the PTZ camera on my right hand side over here. Again, this is the Avkans E20 NDI PTZ camera, which does support NDI along with SDI output and HDMI output. So what cables do we have connected over here? We do have a DC input to supply power. Next over here, this blue cable is a network Ethernet connection, which can be onto the same network as the controller. And finally over here, we do have an HDMI output, which is being sent over here to an HDMI input to the YoloBox Ultra. This is a live streaming video switcher and recorder. We'll talk a little bit more about the Ultra shortly. And next over here, we do have another Avkans PTZ camera, which is an AI auto tracking, which does support NDI HX3 and does also have an SDI output, HDMI output, and does also support PoE as well, as this PTZ camera also supports PoE. So at the back here, what connections do we have? We have a DC input to supply power to the camera. Again, we do have that network cable to give this camera an IP address. And next over here, we do have an HDMI output, which is being sent over here to the YoloBox Ultra HDMI input number 2. And on this YoloBox Ultra, I'm actually using it for the purpose of this video, not only to give you guys a bigger display screen of the PTZ cameras, but also to be able to take advantage of the isolated recordings. As you see over here, I do have it configured to record at 1080p. It is recording my program, my HDMI 1 and my HDMI 2. Here I have set up my frames per second along with my bit rate and the encode format. So now that you guys are a little bit more familiar with my setup with the controller, the two PTZ cameras and the YoloBox Ultra, let's go ahead and get you guys more familiar with the controller itself. I will point out we're not going to be able to cover every single menu and setting throughout the course of this video. So if you do have any questions or comments, let me know down in the comment section down below. But starting off onto the right hand side over here of the controller, we do have this joystick. As you can see, I do have full control of camera number 1 right now, and I can go ahead and pan left and right. I can also tilt up and tilt down, and I can also zoom in as well by rotating this little joystick controller over here to the right clockwise or counterclockwise to zoom out. So as far as the pan and the tilt speed, we can actually control the speed of the pan and the tilt right over here. So let's go ahead and dial it down all the way down to 10%. And now for an example, when I pan, you can see how much slower it is. Same thing as far as the tilting, it is much slower. And if I turn this dial over here, maybe like halfway for an example, you can see how much quicker it is. So as far as the pan and tilt speed, we can control that right over there. So as far as the zoom speed, we do have this little dial over here, which is labeled as speed, and it is controlling the zoom speed. So for an example, let's go ahead and dial it down counterclockwise all the way. And now when I go ahead and zoom in, you can see how much slower it is. And again, not only are we limited to zooming in and zooming out with the joystick, we can also use this little seesaw switch over here, which is going to allow us to either zoom in or to zoom out, and again to be able to fine tune the speed if we would like to. So now that you guys are a little bit more familiar with the joystick, let's go ahead and move along over here to the left hand side, and we can take a look at some of these buttons and dials that we have control of. So this group of buttons and dials over here to the top left hand side, they are actually able to control our white balance settings. So we have auto white balance to enable, one push white balance, and auto black balance as well. And we can adjust these dials over here to adjust the red and the blue of those white balance. If we move along over here, we do have our exposure and focus controls. So right over here, this first dial is labeled as R3, which is controlling our iris, the aperture. Next over here, we have R4, which is controlling the shutter, and R5, which is controlling the camera gain. So we can go ahead and simply control our manual exposure with these dials, or we can go ahead and enable auto exposure, or we got backlight compensation as well. Next over here, we do have two other buttons in regards to our focus. So we can enable autofocus. As you see right now, it is highlighted in blue, or illuminated in blue, should I say. And just above that, we have OP autofocus, which is one push autofocus. So as far as our autofocus controls right over here. When it comes to manually focusing, looking over here at the bottom of the controller, we do have an option over here, this little dial, to rotate this either clockwise or counterclockwise. and we can also adjust the speed of the focus as well. So it's really nice to be able to adjust the manual focus right over here with a specific knob, little dial, and also the speed of that focus. And if we want to quickly enable autofocus again, we can go ahead and simply do that by pressing the autofocus button. So let's move along over here to the next section of buttons just below the display screen. Starting off onto the top, we do have a button labeled as Group, Camera, Add, Inquiry, and Search. So let's start off with Group, just briefly explaining Group. So this controller can actually connect up to 100 PTZ cameras. That's going to allow us to control those cameras. So what they have done is allow us to have a group button, and we can actually basically assign 10 different cameras to each group. So in total, we have 10 groups, and in each group, we can assign 10 different cameras. So that's how you would basically be able to do that. Select the group button, select which group you want to control, and then once you've selected the group, you can go ahead and press camera, and now select which camera in that group you want to control. So that's exactly it right now. So currently I only have 2 PTZ cameras. They are both within group number 1, and now I have selected camera. It is highlighted in green, and I am controlling camera number 1. If I want to go ahead to switch to camera number 2, which is this one onto my right hand side, I just go ahead and simply press 2, and the display screen over here is going to switch over, and now I'm going to have full control of pan, tilt, and zoom of this camera as well. Next over here, we do have an add button, which is basically going to open up the section of the menu that's going to allow us to add another camera. And next to that, we do have another button, which is called Inquiry, and that's going to also bring up the menu settings as far as the inquiry settings for that specific camera. And we do also have another button here labeled as Search, which is going to search for other PTZ cameras that are connected to the same network. So for us to go ahead and briefly demonstrate that, what I need to do is actually press this PVW button, which is the preview button. What does that mean? It's basically giving me a preview video image over here from this camera. So I need to actually disable it to open up the menu. So just briefly having a closer look, let's go ahead and disable the PVW, which is going to remove that display screen, and now have opened up over here the menu of the controller. So for an example, I can quickly press the add button, and it's going to take me to the manage tab, adding a new camera. If I wanted to go ahead and inquire about camera number 2, I can go ahead and select that and also be able to adjust and see those parameters. If I want to search for a camera, it's going to bring up the manage search tab, and I can go ahead and select what do I want to actually search for, an IP Visca, OnVIF, or NDI for an example. So briefly, that is how that section of buttons are working. Let's go ahead and enable the preview window again so I can see the display screen. And I will also come over here to the YOLO box. I'm going to go ahead and actually switch between HDMI 1 to HDMI 2 just so we can see exactly what we're looking at over here on the display screen of the controller. It can mimic that onto the Ultra. So now that we're familiar with those buttons, we are familiar with these buttons down over here as far as the zoom and as far as the manual focus and the speed for both of those. Let's go over here to the right hand side of the display screen. Starting off onto the top, we do have these 2 little rotary dials. The one on the left is labeled as Select, and the next one is labeled as Value. So these buttons are actually going to allow us to navigate throughout the menu. So for me to briefly demonstrate that, again, I'm going to disable the preview, and now I can use this Select dial to rotate it and go into different sections. Let's go ahead and back out of this. Let's go to camera info. Let's select camera info. And within camera info, what do I want to adjust? For an example, like the focus, let's enter the focus. And now I want to scroll over the mode. Let's go to sensitivity. Okay, perfect. So now I'm here at the bottom, and I can have the sensitivity set to high, normal, or low. We're just going to keep it at normal. And to back out of this, we can go ahead and press the value button. So overall, we can use these rotary dials with buttons to control and navigate throughout the menu. Or if you're like me, you may just want to come specifically to the touchscreen itself, and you can just go ahead and press whatever buttons you want to, and it's easy to operate that way as well. So next over here, we do have another group of buttons labeled as auxiliary. Top left hand corner, our first button that we're looking at is labeled as camera power, which is going to allow us to actually power on or power off that PTZ camera that we are currently controlling. Just next to that, we do have camera OSD, which is basically going to allow us to pull up the camera's menu, and then we can use the joystick to navigate throughout that camera's menu. So for us to go and actually enable that, to do that, you need to turn off the preview and now press camera OSD. And what that's going to do, you can see over here, we have displayed the camera's actual menu, which is really nice. I don't need to use the actual remote control. I can use this controller and the joystick. So let's just go ahead and scroll down here. Let's say, for an example, I wanted to go into exposure. Let's go ahead and rotate the zoom control clockwise on this joystick, which is going to allow me to open up those exposure settings. So let's rotate it clockwise. Bang, here we go. As you can see, I have it set to manual mode. I have my gain set to 0. I have my shutter speed set to 1/90. Let's actually adjust that shutter speed over here. We're gonna toggle it left or right over here so we can change it to 1/60. So now that you guys are a little bit more familiar with that, let's go ahead and back out of the menu of the camera. And how do you do that? You rotate the zoom control on the joystick counterclockwise, which is going to back out of the exposure. And now for an example, if you wanted to close the menu, you can go ahead and rotate it one more time counterclockwise and it just closed the menu. Fantastic. So next over here, we do have another button, top right-hand corner, which is labeled as PVW. You guys should be a little bit more familiar with this, which is basically means preview. So if you wanted to preview what the camera is showing, there it is right onto the screen over here, onto the controller. If you wanted to take away the preview because you wanted to go into the controller's menu, just like that. So hopefully you guys are a little bit more familiar with that. Next over here, we do have a couple of customizable function buttons labeled as F1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. Which again, we can fully customize within the menu to whatever kind of setting that we want to. Next over here, we do have another group of buttons. Starting off onto the top left, we do have this button labeled as Store, which is basically going to allow us to start recording our tracking maneuvers. So we can go ahead, let me go ahead and demonstrate this. Let's turn off the preview. Let's press the store. It's going to come to the custom setting underneath the store tab. So let me go ahead and briefly try to demonstrate this because this is actually a really nice feature. Preset number 1. Okay, perfect. So now what I want to do is press start over here and it's actually waiting for me to do some controls with my PTZ camera. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's bring it up a little bit. Let's slide it over here to the right. Let's go ahead and zoom in over here to this lens. Okay, let's zoom out. Let's come over here to the right a little bit more to this PTZ camera. Let's zoom in. Let's zoom out. Okay, and let's come back over here to the controller. Perfect. So what we're going to do now is press stop. And you'll notice over here on the display screen, it is saying recording is complete. So it saved that tracking setting. So now if I want to call that up, I can just go ahead and press call. And it's going to go back to that preset position and just wait for the PTZ camera to do its thing. It's going to basically go through that tracking process that I just did. As you guys just saw, look, I tilted up, I zoomed in over there to that lens, I zoomed back out, I went over there to the camera, I zoomed in onto the camera, I zoomed out onto the camera, and then I went back over here to the controller. So that is phenomenal, and it's going to keep doing that on loop. So that is an amazing feature that I'm really impressed with. And at any time, if you want to go ahead and stop that tracking loop feature, you can just go ahead and press stop over here or manually take control over here onto the joystick. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's just manually take control. Let's zoom back out. Okay, and we're going to come back over here to preset number 1. Perfect, there we go. So that is a really nice feature, guys, and that is how it's done. That is the store button. Okay, so let's go back over here to preview. Let's enable the display screen. Next over here, we have a delete button, pretty straightforward. It's going to allow you to delete your presets or delete your tracking that you just stored over there. Next over here, we do have a lock button as well. So for this lock button to actually be enabled, what you need to do is turn off the preview. You press the lock button, and now it's illuminated in red. And what that means is the whole controller is locked. Look, I have no more control of that PTZ camera. I can't even switch cameras. I can't even do nothing. It's basically locked. So that's a really nice feature if you need to walk away from the controller, that nobody accidentally touches it and starts messing around with all of your settings and everything. So to unlock it, pretty straightforward. Press the unlock button. It's now no longer illuminated in red. And now we have full control of the PTZ camera again. Okay, so really nice. Let's go ahead and turn back on the preview. So next over here, we do have a preset button, which is going to allow us to save our preset. So let me just go ahead and briefly demonstrate this for you. Let's go and use this joystick controller. Let's zoom in over here onto this PTZ camera a little bit. Perfect. So let's say I wanted to save this preset. How do you save the preset? So you press any number that you want. So let's save it to preset number 9. So let's press 9. Okay, and now you need to press the preset to save it. And bingo, we just saved it. So let's go ahead and just confirm that it saved it. Let's just bring this joystick and the camera to another position. And now how do you call up that preset? All you need to do is press the number 9, and now press the call button right over here, bottom right hand corner. And what does it do? Camera goes right to that preset. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other presets that I have configured onto the preset numbers over here briefly. So let's go back to preset number 1. Let's press 1. Let's press call. Perfect. Let's press 2. Let's press call. Let's call up preset number 3. Perfect. Let's go to preset number 4. Let's go to preset number 5. Preset number 6. There it is, preset number 6. Let's go to preset number 7. Perfect. That's a top-down view of my Panasonic GH6, and I preset number 8 to actually zoom in a little bit for you guys. So let's go back to preset number 1 over here. So next over here, we do have a reset button, which is basically going to reset that preset. So for us to actually reset it, delete it, we're going to press the preset number. So let's erase preset number 9 and let's press reset. So now for an example, let's move the joystick over. Let's call up preset number 9 and see what happens. So let's press 9, call. And look what happens. There is no preset saved anymore because we just erased it. So next over here, we do have a button which is labeled as quick call. And I actually do like this feature right over here. So let's go ahead and press down that button so we can enable it. You can see now it is highlighted in blue. And what this is going to allow us to do is with one touch of a button on any one of these preset numbers, it's going to go directly to that preset without having the need to press the call button. So check it out. Let's go to preset number 4. One press of one button. Let's go to preset number 7, one press of a button. Let's go to preset number 9, preset number 6. Just like that, guys. It's really nice and easy to use. I do like that quick call feature. So let's go ahead and disable it for right now. So now if we go ahead and move along here towards the bottom, you guys are already familiar with the call button. Next over here, we do have this little back arrow button, which is basically a delete button as far as the menu. So if you need to go ahead and enter the menu and you have some characters to enter as far as your IP address or even the username or password, and if you need to delete a character, you will be using this button over here onto the left-hand side, which is going to delete that last character. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get you a little bit more familiar with the menu over here on the controller. Starting off onto the top left-hand side, it's telling us some information as far as the camera that I'm currently have control of, as far as the group of the camera, the number of the camera, and along with the protocol that I'm using, which I'm currently using the Visca Sony protocol, and the IP address of that camera. Just below that, we do have these little circles over here, which are basically indicating some values. For an example, the red, which is the white balance adjustment. So if we do rotate this for an example, you can see the number being reflected over there. And as well as the blue for the white balance. We do also have the information as far as the iris exposure and the shutter exposure settings, and as far as the gain settings as well. If we move further down a little bit, we do also have some additional information as far as the pan tilt speed. So as we were talking about earlier, we have this little dial onto the right hand side by the joystick, which we can rotate, which is going to reflect over here the value of the pan tilt speed. Just below that, we have the zoom speed setting, which is right over here. As you see, as we rotate this dial, it's reflecting over there the value as far as the zoom speed, and as well as the focus speed. Remember the dial that we have here to the bottom of the controller, we rotate this and we can see the value right over there. Next, let's have a closer look towards the top of the display screen. You can see we do have camera info, we do have manage, custom, and system. So starting off with camera info, this is where we're going to be able to adjust our exposure settings. We can go ahead and adjust the color, the image, the focus, and some other settings as well as far as the noise reduction. If we come over here to manage, we can go ahead and add cameras, inquiry about some cameras, or search for some cameras. So this is exactly what I did when I first started setting up this device with my PTZ cameras. I came over here to search, I select on VIF, and it performed a search and found those two cameras. Next, let's go ahead to the custom settings. So over here, we can go ahead and save some of these custom preset functions. We do have the CMD as well, the command, other, and store, which we were talking about saving that track. Next, we'll go into system. We have the network connection, the tally configuration, either to set it to program or to follow or in or out. We can reset the device if we need to. Any general settings as far as the backlight, the beeping. So we can turn the beeping off. As you see now, when I go ahead and touch the screen, it is not beeping at me, but I do find having the beep on is actually beneficial because it kind of confirms that when I press the button, it actually pressed the button. Because sometimes when you press a button here on the keyboard, you might have pressed it, but it might have not have registered onto the controller. So having the beep on, in my opinion, is actually beneficial. But in some cases, if you need to, you can turn it off if you'd like to. And as far as the firmware version at the time of making this video, the software is currently set to 1.3.105. and the MCU is currently version 1.5. So now that you guys are a little bit more familiar with the menu and settings, one thing I just wanted to briefly show you guys when first starting off with this controller and connecting your PTZ cameras, I want to show you what I did so I can easily connect my PTZ cameras to this controller. So again, as we talked about, each one of the devices, the cameras, etc., and the controller need to be connected to a network cable and therefore being connected to the same IP address. So what we want to do over here as far as the controller when first getting set up, what I did is I came over here to system underneath network, and you can see that it's automatically detecting my IP address because I have the DHCP set to on, and we can go ahead and set it to off if we want to use a static IP address. But since my PTZ cameras are also set to DHCP set to on, so it's automatically finding the IP address, it just made my life easier to also set the controller to the DHCP set to on so it can automatically find the IP address. So just like that, I was able to go now, for an example, to the manage. I was able to come over to here to search. I was here to press the on VIF. So as you see over here, the controller detected these two PTZ cameras connected to the same network. So let's go ahead and select the one onto the left-hand side. Over here, we can adjust the camera group, the camera number. So let's set this to camera number 1. The model, we'll leave it as normal. The camera name, we'll leave it. IP address is good. The protocol, we'll leave it as on VIF. And over here, you'll notice it asks for the user and the password as well. So as far as I recall, the password for these Avkans cameras are not admin. So what we need to do is actually go over here and delete that. So we'll press this back delete button to delete the characters. And the password that I have by default for these PTZ cameras is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now we're going to go ahead and press call, and you'll see over here onto the bottom left, connect successful. Perfect. So let's go back to manage. Let's go back to search. Let's click on VIF again, and it's going to search for those cameras again. So again, we already configured camera number 1 onto the left. Let's go to camera number 2 onto the right hand side. So let's change this one to camera number 2. We're going to leave this all the same, but as far as the password, we need to change this as well. So delete admin, and we're going to put in over here password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So let's go ahead and call that up. And what does it say over here? Connect successful. Perfect. So now we can go ahead and press the preview button over here, and now we're going to be able to switch between these two cameras and have full control over both of them. Waiting. Perfect. So this is camera number 2. Let's switch to camera number 1. The controller is switching over to camera number 1, and as you see, we have full control of both of these cameras over here. Let's go back to camera number 2. Switching over, and now we got full control of this camera as well. So one other thing that I wanted to point out to you, as you saw, we do have the protocol set to on VIF, and we do have control of the PTZ camera as far as the pan, tilt, and zoom and all of that stuff. But you know what, as far as the manual exposure settings, if you look, if I go ahead and rotate these dials, nothing is actually happening. So what I suggest to do, what works best for me at least, is I'm going to come back over here to the menu. I'm going to go over here to manage, and I'm going to inquiry about camera number. Let's go to camera number 1, and I'm going to switch it from the protocol being on VIF, and now I'm going to switch it over here to Visca Sony, and I'm going to go ahead and press save, and it says save complete. So let's call up that camera. It says connecting, connection successful. So let's bring up the preview. So which camera are we looking at? Camera number 1. Perfect. We still got full control with the Sony Visca. And now let's see if I adjust my exposure of the iris over here on what happens. And as you see, I have full control of the manual exposure now because I'm using the Sony Visca. And again, as well as the gain for that camera as well, I have full control. So just my little 2 cents on what I find works best for me. So let's go ahead back into the menu over here and do the same thing for the next camera. So let's go to manage. Inquiry. I want to inquiry about camera number 2, and I'm going to switch this from on VIF to Visca Sony, and I'm going to go ahead and press save. Let's go ahead. It says save complete. Let's press call, and what does it say? Connection successful. So let's go back to the preview. So let's go ahead and see if we have control of the exposure, the iris now that we set to Visca Sony. And as you see, the aperture and the iris and the shutter and all the gain exposure controls is working fantastic. So that is my experience when using those 2 different protocols. In my opinion, the Visca Sony one seems like it's working best, which is giving me the most amount of control. Well, guys, it looks like we reached that time of the video to give you my overall thoughts and opinion of this controller. If you guys cannot tell already throughout the course of this video, I'm definitely very impressed with this controller. controller, build quality, and also how easy it is to set up and operate. All of the controls that we have available, the white balance, the exposure, the focus, the zoom, the pan, the tilt, the speed, so many nice features, even the presets, and the fact that we can actually record those different track settings underneath the store option, and we can just kind of set that on loop and just kind of set it and forget it. It definitely is a really nice feature. Overall, I'm very impressed with it. Would I recommend it? Yes, 100%. The touchscreen, the display, overall, I'm really do like using this. And as you guys can see here in this video, it's really nice and easy to use as well. So overall, I do appreciate you guys tuning in. If you guys do have any questions, let me know down in the comments. I will leave some affiliate links down in the description of this video, just in case you guys are interested in purchasing the controller or camera or the Ultra. Overall, that's a wrap. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys onto the next video. Till next time, peace.